BLOCKCHANCE Online Live is an online live-streamed broadcast talk show about blockchain, AI, and green technology. We bring inspiring speakers and innovative thought leaders together to talk about current and future developments within these exciting new fields. Join us to learn how we can use these disruptive technologies to better aid humanity and strive for a fair, secure, humane, and positive future. Get involved in our community and share your opinions and ideas. Together, we can make a difference.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to BLOCKCHANCE Online Live. My name is Albert Peci, and I'm your host today. Since this is my very first show, let me quickly introduce myself before we jump into the topic. I have a background in philosophy and computer science, and I state that these fields are deeply connected. And my main thesis of all my work, all my projects that I do is that there is no neutral technology. And technology is actually enabled by narratives. So my focus is mainly on revealing these conditions, how technology is created, and making the speakers of those narratives visible. And I'll do this by analyzing their language and try to break the narratives this way. So to give you just an example, in the blockchain space, the metaphor of to the moon is quite well known. And I really hate this because this is so price focused. But what's really interesting about this metaphor is when you zoom out a little and look at the outer space, then to the moon does not make sense in the sense that you go up, because in outer space, there is no up and down. Up and down are no absolute directions. They are relative. So going to the moon could also mean crashing down. And this is also what we will try here in this discussion. We will pay attention to details. We will try to think through thoughts. And today's topic is all about the future of permissionless blockchains. We will especially talk about the failed promises of current blockchain technologies in the past and new hopes through new projects. The idea of BLOCKCHANCE Online Live is that we have a discussion together. So it's not meant like an interview or something. It's more like we want to think through thoughts. We really want to reflect on ideas. And every one of you is invited to ask your questions, to give your opinion. And you can do this on Telegram. You can do this on Twitter, LinkedIn, or also on YouTube. And please be brave. Please also be stupid. Don't be afraid to ask questions that might seem naive. We are all into this together. And also, if you like what we're doing, we are also giving out a ticket, like in the middle of the show. You just need to be the first to answer a quick question. And now, without further talking about this, let's jump right into our today's guest. Our today's guest is Fabian Vogelsteller. I'm really happy that he made it to our show. He is well known to be the author of, for example, ERC20, which is a token standard that is used by thousands of projects. This token standard actually secured billions of dollars over the last 5 years, roughly. But he is also the author of, for example, ERC725, which is a blockchain-based identity standard, which we will also talk about today. Nowadays, he is one of the founders of Lukso, which is a blockchain that is focused on community, fashion, and lifestyle. And we will talk about all these topics with him. Please say hello to the audience, Fabian.
Hi. Hello and welcome.
All right. Thanks very much. And to quickly set the mood of the show, because since it's meant to be more like a discussion and really trying to dig into some thoughts, how many miners do you need to change a light bulb in the proof of work system?
I guess one guy in the room should be able to do it. There's not many people managing these mining farms, I guess. Lots of computers, and there's like maybe a few like who have to constantly replace things.
Yes, also an alternative answer would be like you need all of them, right? One to do it and the rest to verify. And but let's jump into some definition work. When we think about the future of permissionless blockchains, we first of all need to understand what is actually permissionless blockchains. This sounds so abstract. Maybe we made it more tangible. Maybe you can try to give us a first definition, and that we can talk about this.
So basically, permissionless blockchains, and so the whole idea about permissionlessness means that you have an infrastructure that is not controlled or run by one single party or anybody who can control who is using this infrastructure. And I think, we have a varying degree of like decentralization in the blockchain space. And I think one of the interesting things we have seen in the last few years is that everybody tried to make the faster and better blockchain. And in most cases, it just meant that they are less decentralized than, for example, Bitcoin and Ethereum as like the two, I would say, leaders of the pack. And permissionlessness means that you ideally have no single set of ruling class that somehow can prevent people from using the network. There's a lot of I think proof of stake and delegated proof of stake blockchains where you on the end up having 20 or something staking leaders, especially in a delegated proof of stake system, like the top is some 20. And if they would like to shut down certain smart contracts or like prevent transactions to certain smart contracts, they could easily do that. And I think like a real permissionless system should not allow for that. There should be always a way to avoid this censorship.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, Antonopoulos names like 5 different properties of a permissionless or open blockchain, as he calls it, which are it's open. So it means that everybody can actually build for this and also use it. It's also one thing that we often forget in this digital world. It's borderless. This means that it's not on one jurisdiction in one country where it could be shut down by a state, for example. Another important property is that it's neutral. So all transactions are equally processed by rules that are predefined. And one important trait that I want to stress especially is the censorship resistance. So it means that everybody can actually sign transactions and give it to the network, and they will be executed. So there is no way, except of course you are going through malicious nodes that don't spread your transaction, but you could choose at any time any other node to actually spread your transaction. And the last point that Antonopoulos names is that it's public. So there is no single entity that is ruling above the code and deciding how this is developed. Though we have foundations that have great influence on these developments, but it's not like somebody could not just hard fork it and do their own version, and the community most likely would adopt this if it benefits the community. And the thing that is raised next, if we think about this, who actually needs a permissionless blockchain? Like, okay, it sounds like a nice thing, but who is actually the one that profits from such a system? Because if we ask this question in countries like Germany, many people will say, well, I don't need it, like it seems useless. And this is what Antonopoulos says is, yes, just because you don't need it, it does not mean that nobody needs it. It does not mean that it's useless. It only means that you're privileged. And
yeah, so I do think we have to it's kind of funky when my picture always goes big, like all the focus on me. So I think also what we have to think about is that it's not only if it's needed or not. Most of the innovation didn't necessarily come from, oh my God, we need to maybe, when the railroad system or something is like, you want to go really far distances fast, okay, we need a better system to get there. But sometimes also the future comes in means that nobody has expected it, means there was also no need for it. And I think especially in that kind of if you really think about it, I guess that you could come up with needs. But I think the future we are going, for example, which is like highly digital, highly virtual, looking at this headset there. For example, in that there's obviously, once you start experiencing it, once you start spending time in it, you do see there's needs for a lot of things, but it's not obvious to the most people, right? I mean, for example, there was also no need for Zoom until everything is shut down and you need to make everything now digital. And now it's like it doesn't work without it anymore. So I think it's sometimes innovation comes around the corner and then it looks very surprising to people. It comes like from an angle they haven't expected. And I think like this is, for example, the things I'm interested in, building and working in the direction to create these things that are not necessarily obvious at the beginning. But then later everybody says, it was so obvious. It was obvious in hindsight, obviously.
If we just walk a step back and think about the past a little bit more before we jump straight into the future, is the very early promises of blockchain that evolved around the ecosystem. I mean, there was no single entity stating this, and there were communities that were developing these statements. Is, for example, independency from banks or free markets, banking the unbanked. Many of these promises have not been fulfilled yet. But I'm rather interested on what kind of promises are new blockchains making, because as you stated, many of them are just like Ethereum killers trying to be faster than it. But what is it actually that they enable?
I mean, I cannot really talk for other people's blockchains. I can't really talk for my own ideas. But I think, how I see basically this whole blockchain landscape evolving is, we have always, I'm in Bitcoin since 2013, and I think like a lot of us thought there's this one blockchain that will rule them all. This is this kind of ideal, because if we all use one blockchain, then we have this super interoperable system that we could build. And obviously the hardcore maximalist in Bitcoin believes that will be Bitcoin. And if not, it will be Bitcoin SV or whatever other random Bitcoin. But the point is, I think what we start to learn is that because the world is so big, and actually the blockchain space is so small, even though we all think like it's huge and there are millions of people, it's tiny really. And if we start to realize, if we really want to have a global blockchain infrastructure, it can only be around certain communities, meaning networks forming around certain communities, because one single network can never run the whole world, at least not for the foreseeable future. Because even if you have a network, let's say, which can do 1 billion transactions per day, if you put a lot of infrastructure on a blockchain, 1 billion transactions per day is totally nothing. So the thing is, we do need different communities that create their own networks, have their own synergies, have their own protocols, have their own purpose. And from there, we can interconnect different networks to create different synergies between different communities. And eventually, maybe in 10, 20 years, maybe earlier, we will grow to a more unified network, or it does stay this kind of network of networks. So I actually talked about this idea of like the internet of blockchains a few years back already, because I think that's the only suitable way forward. And I think what a lot of other networks, in my opinion, didn't really do that smartly is they were not really thinking what purpose their network is for, what community they want to attract. They basically thought, okay, we do the faster Ethereum, and because we are faster than Ethereum, everybody comes to us, obviously, or we have the better smart contract language, and that's why everybody's wanting to use ours, because we have security built in or whatever. And that's a very foolish belief, because first, that's not how developers think. They go where most people are, because that's where the tools is and where the knowledge is. But also, if everybody says now we are the platform for DeFi, then everybody, like from a user, they only go where apps are, and developers think like, which one I pick? Ethereum. It's because everybody is there. So it's really hard sell, because nobody really defines their purpose properly and says, okay, I'm building this new economy, or I'm building this new direction, or I have some new ideas. They're really literally all jumping on the same hype train and think, I get a little piece of cake there with my little network and so on. And I think this is where more visionary ideas come in, that when you foresee what's the next wave that's likely to come because of the pieces that have to exist and the logical path, then you can build in a blue ocean that not everybody sees right now. And we are kind of, it's interesting because the things we have talked about in 2019 in our white paper and the things that I have already been building, like this, blockchain-based profiles in 2017 and talking about these things. And this is now becoming relevant, and we are seeing a lot of people that copy our ideas, use our language, like literally across this NFT space, and that's flattering, to some degree. But it's also a bit funny because it feels like they have no own ideas. And they're not adhering to the proper open source standard of referencing the source. But that's okay. On the end, it's like it's a big community, and it will be a very big new space, and that leads a lot of players and a lot of people building in that. So I think it's all about the purpose, and I think that's what most people haven't really realized.
Can we spend a minute thinking about the purpose of, or rather, let me put it this way. So when you developed the ERC 725 standard, on which circumstances were you developing this, and how did your vision about what this can be used for change throughout the years, especially for the present?
So the circumstances basically where this came from is I have been part of the Ethereum Foundation early on, and I have built together with Alexander van der Sande, I have built the Mist browser, which is the first Web3 browser. So at the time, we had to think about how do a normal person interact with blockchain, and also how does a DApp works, and what is even a DApp, and how would you talk to smart contracts. So we had really to come up with a lot of concepts and ideas, and we developed this together, like with the team. But like Alex, I, and a few others were really the app developers in Ethereum who had to define a lot of this early day experience. And the thing is, I think Ethereum itself was already a major improvements over your interaction with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, there was literally one Bitcoin wallet, and there was Bitcoin, and then that was all there was. And then there was some other wallets, and Ethereum really opened the Pandora's box, because now you could make applications that now we see DeFi, for example, but that run protocols that are more complex and things that might not have to do with money in the first place. And this it took a while for us to understand of what's a good interaction way, and how you deal with this and how you interact with this. And there's funny enough so we met in 2015 in March in Amsterdam, because I was part of the Go Ethereum team, and we were kind of like a meeting there. And Jeffrey had this idea, okay, we should not integrate private key, public key accounts in the Mist browser at all. We should actually use only smart contract-based accounts. And that's really interesting, because at the time it was really hard to understand even how Ethereum works and how smart contracts work. And Jeffrey already thought that step ahead, understanding that we have to abstract this away from the user. And literally what ERC 725 and all of these standards is that I did years later is kind of extending on this idea and like formulating it out and building it out, and now building a whole like standard and tooling and infrastructure around that to make the smart contract-based accounts possible, because they are literally the essence to enable the next way of how we interact with blockchain. If we make our accounts a smart contract, we can have a more easy and more safe interaction, because we can grow our security, and we don't have to make people write down 12 words in the initial interaction with their blockchain application that they literally have no idea what they're doing, make them fear that they lose their things, and also have the ability to create accounts that can gain reputation and that can keep reputation. And when we came up with the idea about Lukso, initially it was a strong fashion focus, and it still is, because it's a very creative community, and it really allows also these female audiences to go into blockchain. But from the very beginning, the idea was to create an ecosystem, and that's why we built a blockchain and not just an app. And the whole idea is to create an ecosystem that allows this new creative economy, how we called it in 2019, and basically building all of these pieces and these building blocks to make that possible. And one really essential building block in this is this universal profiles. It's basically smart contract-based accounts that can gain reputation. And especially when you're a creator, when you're a creative person, when you're a YouTuber, when you're any person that has some kind of public appearance or a brand or a company, I mean, your account that issues great things, can receive money or can do things, can make statements, is essential. And it's essential that this is independent and this is owned and controlled by yourself or by whoever, that group is behind that. And I think we are seeing the problems with that in today's web, where we have deplatforming happening and where we have YouTubers who can't survive even though they have 500,000 views on a video because the advertisement fee doesn't really cut it. And they have to use Patreon to really even create a channel in the first place. So there's a lot of issues with our centralized infrastructure. And I think blockchain-based account is the essence to actually completely solve that. And so creating it from a standards perspective and building and creating the tools to make that happen and to let others build things around that is far easier than trying to come up with that super duper all feature solution that has it all, and then nobody wants to adopt it because it looks too complicated and looks too proprietary and not really a community owned thing. So from the bigger vision, not much has changed. Some focus points have changed of where we focus on. For example, digital fashion is something that came up along the way. They got us very interested in, and we focused more on that initially. But the overall vision has been the same, and it's literally laid down in the white paper that we wrote in 2019. And everybody just starts to discover very much that what we wrote there. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. If we look at Ethereum, for example, right now with all these high gas fees and so on, that it's mainly interesting for traders. So this is also the main focus with all the decentralized finance community out there. But as you just mentioned, we have really specific people using these systems. And one problem is they are sold as neutral and multi-purpose. But right now we're actually doing just one thing with them. And we disabled actually other use cases. For example, this use case that Lukso is trying to fulfill is especially for digital or in general lifestyles. And if we think about Lukso as domain-specific blockchain, why do you think it's lifestyle and communities and not something else? So do you think this is one of the big trends right now, or how did you came up with actually in this rather strange focus on communities?
Because I don't know how to say that, because I could feel that this is the future. So and because this is something that both I and Marjorie are highly interested in since the beginning, and the thing is, it is just the obvious next logical step. So everybody, looks at blockchain and see, oh, money, and there was Bitcoin, and then they saw Ethereum, and now because of ERC20, they all turned to build money Legos, and now it's all DeFi. But that's not seeing the future and understanding the space. This is literally just running after the next thing that just came up right now. And I think if we think this through, what's the only logical way of how this can come to mainstream? I mean, first off, you obviously want to be interesting to normal people who are not necessarily trying to bet their house on some crazy stuff they don't understand. And second, it needs to be less technical or non-technical attractive. That means we have to have standards and we have to have systems that make that adoptable for normal people. And then obviously you can look at what is interesting to the social environment, our social web. And I mean, DeFi doesn't really pop up there a lot, It's obviously people want to create things and people want to be part of the cultural discussions. And there will be completely new things that people can create and will create. But we need to build basically the infrastructure to make this new social web happen. And there's a lot of what the creative communities will bring into this play. It's just, also on the end, it's a gut feeling. You can only go by your gut feeling if you want to see the future. There's no way that you can fully predict things. You just can go by your gut feeling, and that's what I have done since like forever. And it's just obvious to me that that's what's coming next. And also, when you look at the blockchain space, it's kind of funky to look at it, but the whole blockchain space is still based on ERC20 as like almost everything, every standard, every bigger thing we have in the blockchain space is literally rooted back to ERC20. And that's such a simple standard, that we came up back then, and like it's 2015, and I feel like there's no other bigger standard or column that is being really established or that has been really defined that kind of like is outside of that token narrative. And obviously, for many of us, I guess it was clear that identity is a very important piece, but also it seems like nobody really came up with something concrete that got adopted and that also makes sense on the blockchain and that does not necessarily try to be a business model. And I think a lot of projects that are building in the identity space, the problem is they want to be a business model. And so they have to tweak their ideas to somehow, create value on a business level. And that makes these standards most of the time already uninteresting, because now they are like not open, they're not unbiased, they're not like generic, they're like already like some very specific thing to whatever, justify the token of the project or somehow other are being too biased. And I think ERC 725 seems to be like the only one that really is not that. Because when I made it up, I had nothing to do with identity. I just thought it was the right thing to do, and like it made sense. And I still think that. So, and there's a lot of things now that we can actually do that make sense. And I think it's such a core building block for so many things to come that it's for me confusing that people haven't even like understood that yet. So, but there was.
And there is a really practical question from the community in the chat right now from Paddy. He asked if Lukso is how is Lukso actually planning onboarding older people? So what kind of systems are you trying to introduce to make it more approachable for people that are less techy, like not even just older people, but in general, people that are less techy? So what's your...
So there's the technical answer. That I guess I will not say right now, but in very simple terms is building is so basically ideally the Web3 experience is easier than the Web2 experience. The world we live in right now is the login of the world we live in right now is a literal hack. So you have to like sign up with email and password on every platform. Why do you have to do that? Because there's no decentralized or centralized or whatever government controlled account system that we can reuse our accounts. We always have to tell them again, hey, that's my email address, and by the way, please verify it. And they have to store me in their database, and they have to do this with every single other website. If I take that account system out and put it on a blockchain, and now I control it myself, not only can I log into many services without a password, because I can sign messages with my keys that control my account, but I can also have 100% control, of that account and whatever happens there. So the thing is, we can build systems, because when we have a smart contract-based account, we can build systems where interacting with those accounts and the risk of losing control of these accounts can be done like in such a way that there's almost no risk. You could build social recovery in. You could have a third party being able to reset your password, basically. Or have a recovery key for you. You can have your friends having recovery keys for you. You can have multiple devices controlling the same account. So if you lose one, it's not a big deal because you have the other device that has somehow more power and like regains access. There's just so many things we can now build and standardize on top of that accounts just on the permission level alone. I can even give keys to applications, knowing that key in this application cannot do any harm to my account while speaking as me, or acting as me on the blockchain. There's just an unlimited amount of possibilities of what we can do just on that user experience alone. And we're still in the standardization process around these authentication processes. And that alone makes it just, you on the end, ideally, you have a mobile app. And if you want to log in, you scan a QR code, press OK. And then every time this app does something more tricky, you have to confirm it on your phone, or you confirm it in your browser, or whatever other means there is. So for people, it will be just they are being asked questions either on their phone or on a pop-up in some form, but the control is with them, and they don't have to constantly remember passwords and doing all the same things. So there's just so many things we can do on that experience level alone. And then on top of this comes, once you have such a system, what startups and what other protocols can be built on top of this that include your account, that includes such a blockchain-based account. The sky's the limit here, really.
So when we think about this brave new world, many people that are especially not from the blockchain space, they hear about the energy consumption of proof of work systems like Bitcoin and Ethereum. We have a proof of stake system for Ethereum too, and especially the community right now is asking how will Lukso actually deal with this sustainability problem. And maybe here is a good way to introduce or explain more about the tech that Lukso is actually using.
So, the network itself basically will run Casper on a consensus level. Casper is the ETH 2.0's proof of stake algorithm. So we are building on the shoulders of giants, and we're building in the technology direction that I have been part of in the past as well. But we're combining it in such a way and creating a orchestration consensus that allows us to run Casper together with EVM execution in a scalable and in a secure way. So basically, we don't have mining. We have staking, and we're actually using the most decentralized consensus, proof of stake consensus that I would say exists today. That is Casper. So we can see, for example, the ETH 2.0 beacon chain running with 80,000 validators. That's potentially possible on the Lukso network as well. Plus, you have smart contract execution. Plus, it's built in such a way that when the sharding solutions come in Ethereum, we can also have those sharding solutions in Lukso as well. So, I guess the advantage of why we can go like this is because we don't have a package of $120 billion or $200 billion network with us. We can just start from scratch. We can be more flexible and we can be more agile. So that's literally a big thank you to Ethereum, and the development around ETH 2.0. Because we can move that faster forward, and I guess also through that benefit and contribute back to the ETH 2.0 development, which is, as I see Ethereum, it's not just the Ethereum mainnet, it's this technology stack, it's the EVM, it's Solidity, it's all the tooling that's and the knowledge that exists around it that really is Ethereum. And Ethereum mainnet is just one network that right now happened to turn out to be finance focused because of, I guess, ES20. But I think in order to really get this new user crowd to use blockchain, it's completely useful actually to start a new network first. It's cheaper. We have far more scalability. It's its own crowd. Sure, certain protocols would make sense, like Uniswap, but you can redeploy a Uniswap on Lukso without problem either as well. That's not a big deal. But it's a complete different, many of the protocols and many of the things that exist on Ethereum right now, they are irrelevant in this new creative space right now. Certain pieces, make sense and that you can overtake, and others just don't. It's a complete new user crowd. Already the NFT space has been an outlier on Ethereum itself. That seems to change now, but it's complicated because it's expensive. So issuing NFTs, transferring NFTs, and all of this is just expensive on Ethereum. And the other benefit is, and this is literally the biggest one, we can define, or we have defined standards, and people will adopt the standards that we have defined early on. That means we can make a better compatibility between core standards, like, for example, how you create an account. How does an account look on this blockchain? How does an NFT look like on this blockchain? How these things work in concert? And because Ethereum was a bit more messy, how this whole standardization started, there's 1,000 standards proposal. Compatibility is very limited. Everybody literally just basically is ERC20 compatible, and that's it. And it's a bit of a chaos. And in order to clean up that mess, to say it nicely, we can basically, we can think this through better and give basic Lego blocks that are by design already compatible. For example, it's very important that if I have an account and I'm receiving a token, that my account smart contract is notified about receiving the token, and that the tokens are built in such a way that they are more interoperable and integratable in existing protocols and in new protocols. And right now, I mean, even DAI does not inform a smart contract when you send it to it. And I told it to them before they issued DAI 2.0, so they could have done that. Then we would have accepted DAI in the RICO, but it didn't happen. So, I mean, this is kind of these kind of problems that nobody really understands, who doesn't really fully understands the tech. And once you have this new basis, it's just so much easier to build things. And it's just so much faster how certain protocols, how apps and marketplaces and all these kind of things can evolve. So.
Yeah, it's a really interesting approach that you just explained to us, where you're basically using a Casper FFG and also an execution environment. I think you call it Catalyst, where you actually can run your smart contracts. So what you actually have, put in other words, is an Ethereum 2 blockchain. But it's running already almost. I mean, yes, with a few limitations to that statement, but still the advantage that you have is that you can completely connect to the whole ecosystem that is out there, and the tooling and the knowledge that you just mentioned. And also here's a question from Max from the community that who asked if you see Lukso as a potential testnet for Ethereum 2, or how would you consider, what kind of advantages does get Ethereum 2 from a network like Lukso that is already running?
I mean, so the thing is, I mean, so what is the, I mean, I'm not sure if you could say a testnet. I mean, the people that build on Lukso, they will stay on Lukso. There's no reason for anybody to move anywhere else. I guess that will very much be clear very quickly. But obviously, I mean, I have built Ethereum, you know, with the technology, the developer tools around that, and a lot of these things. I have helped build that as well, and that's where I come from. And obviously, if we can contribute back to Ethereum 2.0. I mean, I guess just because we are building already a sharding connection to a beacon chain, that already is very useful knowledge and things that will definitely help ETH 2.0. I think right now also ETH 2.0 is a little bit in a strange state. You know, the idea was always to create a homogeneous network with many shards that work the same way, and now it's going into this idea of having a lot of like almost like state channel side chains, and I don't really think this is exactly the way it should go. But I mean, this, I guess, yeah, we are in a way paving the way on another level in a certain direction. I mean, the real future for any of these sharding networks will be zero knowledge proofs or CK Starks and Snarks that we need in order to verify these shards quickly without running all of them. And that's the essential tech. And this is also the big reason why we don't have it yet. So as long as this comes, the vision that I see for a sharded network, you know, is possible. We also call it a bit different. So we actually call our beacon chain is called Vanguard, and the execution engine is called Pandora. You know, Pandora is a female, Vanguard is a guy. Vanguard like walks ahead, you know, he's the guy who paves the way. And Pandora is like the creative source. That's where the smart contracts are executed. So it's a bit of a different setup. And there's a Lukso orchestrator, which like makes these people these two talk. So it's a bit of a different setup. Actually, we are scrapped the idea of using Catalyst. We actually rebuilding this completely. I'm not completely. It's based on Go Ethereum still, but you know, the architecture is different. But yeah, I mean, it works actually really nicely, and it's going forward really nicely. So I'm very excited to see this happening. And it's literally, yeah, you have the beauty of ETH 2.0, high decentralization, low execution resource waste, let's say, because there's no mining. Ideally, it can be even verified on low-end devices to some degree. Plus, you have full smart contract execution, compatible to Web3.js and all of these things. So I think that's great. There's actually one quick technical question here. Will we be paying gas on Lukso? yes, you do pay gas on every blockchain. You do pay transaction fees in every network, but because of first off, it's a new network, transaction fees are a lot cheaper because as long as the network is not filled up, gas prices don't go that high. This is really just the only reason why Ethereum is expensive, and Bitcoin too. But on the other hand, there's a lot of transaction relay services and things we can build because a lot of the tokens we have are also meant for those kind of ecosystem incentivization systems that then allow you to make dApps more easily without having to make people buy Lux first in order to interact on the network. And also the other thing is, we also as dApp developers, application developers, we have to rethink how we build our apps. I mean, it's a nice idea like that you want to do everything super decentralized, and this was all of our mission in Ethereum, and all of our early experiments were of how can we make it the most decentralized possible. But the problem is that it creates a lot of friction, and that's exactly today on Ethereum, right? You have to remember 12 words, and you have to get Ether that literally kills almost 90% of your audience. So obviously, the app developers have to pay for the fees of their users, especially initially, and that's just the way how every app works. Yeah, every app pays for servers, pays for Amazon and Google Cloud infrastructure. Without that, you see that upfront, this cost that's incurred. I do hear he see here IOTA. I mean, that would be a longer discussion, but this is not exactly. So I'm not sure if you ever have used IOTA. It's quite slow and complicated. It has its own problems. It's very centralized because of the way it works. So that's a complete different discussion. And there is sadly no silver bullet or magic, bullet that solves all the problems. No matter whatever random blockchain project says. So.
Absolutely, and we will talk more about what kind of problems or opportunities the Lukso blockchain gives in a second, where we will see, okay, what are the actual next steps? What are the things that you already did in the past few months? For example, I've seen that you have digitized or helped archive the photographs by Karl Lagerfeld, for example, which is really interesting. And also see what are the next steps here. For now, we will do a quick break, and then right after the break, we will hand out a question, and whoever answers this question first can win a €300 ticket for the conference, the BLOCKCHANCE conference happening in early July. Fabian will also be there, and he will give a keynote, so you also have the chance to meet him there. And we'll see us right after the video.
Who owns your data? Who owns your money? Your future? We are approaching a new dawn. Blockchain technology. Artificial intelligence. Sustainability. Part of the evolution. Hamburg, Germany, 2021.
All right, welcome back. And now get your keyboards ready. So here's the question that enables you to win a ticket worth 300 euros for the show in July. When was the very first block for Ethereum 2 mined? What is the exact date here? So whoever answers in one of our channels will win this ticket. Our team is monitoring the chat. So I can imagine people are currently using Google, but you can also just go on an Explorer and look it up. So let's see who finds the answer first. You see, there are a few answers. Let's see who was actually the first one to answer.
I mean, so the answer 2015 is definitely only 1.0, but this was actually July 29th or July 30th, actually. I think it was July 29th, I think.
I think 29th, yes. I also don't remember quite now.
Yeah, it was literally 1 day before or 2 days before August. But it's about
Really?
ETH 2.0, right? It's not about
It's about
ETH
ETH 2.0, yes. We're
whoever is in 2015 is definitely wrong.
But do you remember the day when the first block was mined in Ethereum 1?
I mean, I think it was 29th of July or 30th. I'm not exactly sure, but it was the end of July, 2015, obviously.
What were you doing this day, or when did you start?
We won the office. We won the office. Yeah. Vitalik was there. There's even nice pictures where we all were like looked at the countdown. I built this little Meteor website with a countdown. That was running down until the first block started. It was super cool. We were all here in Berlin.
Oh, nice. I didn't know actually that you were all in the office there.
I think actually one of the blog posts, I do think our test network blog post, or one of the Rico blog posts on medium.com/Lukso has the picture on the bottom of that day where we all where you see all the, let's say, OGs, Gavin, Vitalik, everybody was there. It's one of the blog posts. There's the picture if you want to see the day live in Berlin.
Yes, we should share in the
Who Telegram. Can find that blog post really quickly? That's the right question.
Yes. But we have finally a winner. Nice. It's Presto. He won. Congratulations. Please contact our team to get your prize here. And also what's interesting about the very first block is that there was, we have this graffiti field, and the very first message that we put into the Genesis block was Mr. F was here, whatever this means. Do you have some insights here?
That was not me, no.
Too bad. But now let's come back to Lukso actually, because what you just mentioned seems something that is not too far away. Like, we're not talking about the system that will launch maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, or who knows when it will really launch, but it's actually something that is right in front of us. And could you maybe walk us through the very next steps on your ideas, your visions on how to onboard people, and also what kind of projects will help you do so?
Yeah, so you spoke about the Karl Lagerfeld project. So the Karl Lagerfeld project is a larger project. We haven't done that yet. So this is in the making. This is putting a lot of history on the Lukso mainnet. There's a lot of projects and a lot of projects that we are working with, and a lot of projects that we are building internally that will use the Lukso mainnet. And the big piece, obviously, on the one hand, is the network. This development is going very smoothly, and it's pretty nice, actually. But on the other hand, it's about finalizing and building the tools around the core standards, which is the universal profiles. It's called LSP3, Lukso Standards Proposal number 3, and a few other of these standards building the tools, building the infrastructure. We're building cache systems. We're building systems to make deploying these profiles really easy. There's a lot of documentation, building the smart contracts, showing people how to do it, because on the end, it's not only about us building everything, but like about building the tools and the knowledge for others to use these things in the right way. There's a few internal projects, not all of that we can mention right now, that are quite exciting, that will use not only obviously all the universal profiles and this new NFT standards that we are building, but it will also bring in a new kind of like NFT use cases. And I think like when we are thinking about the NFT space, it feels a little bit like it doesn't really has evolved much from a technical perspective, because we are still running everything on this very basically 7-to-1 like ERC20 adoption for IDs, and it's not really thought out well enough, in my opinion, of what NFTs can be. And on the one hand, the smart contract standard is something that we have evolved with ERC 7.5 and LSP4. There's like a lot more things you can do on top of with an NFT and what it could be. But on the other hand, also a lot of the NFTs we currently have, it's all about like creating like, whatever digital file. Most of the time it's just an image, and then say, hey, look, I put it on the blockchain, now it's valuable. I mean, I think there's a lot of philosophical questions we have to ask ourselves. So what really is an NFT? What's valuable? Is like the ownership valuable, or is the asset itself that's linked valuable? Should we allow access to the asset for everybody, or should we somehow restrict it based on the ownership? These are all questions that are not really discussed, and they are completely open. On the other hand, most of the NFTs have very little usage. There's no function to it. While what you could do is, for example, digital fashion is a really good example, because it's a 3D asset that could have a life. It could have a life in a selfie, but it could have also life in VR or in a game. So that's like an NFT that somehow can have its life on its own. On the other hand, you could also have these NFTs being connected to other protocols. So owning the NFT now gives you this benefit in these other protocols, or this participation in some form or shape. So I think there's like so much room for exploration, what can happen. But we need first universal profiles for reputation to build up around these the people who creators, independently of a website or a platform. And second, we need to have better standards around these NFTs so that they are more flexible, that they are more readable by smart contracts, that you can attach reputation system and protocols and all of kind of things. And I think right now the NFT space is really just like putting images like on super rare or on Rarible, and that's like random. So I think there's just so much more we can do on that front. In terms of like our roadmap, obviously the mainnet is the big one, and the applications that we are building that will release with it, and building really the infrastructure and the tools. There's a lot of work that goes into that, because let's say it's almost like the Web3.js and the Mist browser of the Lukso space. And this is the two things that help move a lot. So we need those things.
And so to get a little more practical here, so how would I actually, for example, as a developer, contribute to the Lukso system right now? What would be the very first things that I could already start to build upon or help building? And also, how do you want to target the very first users? So are there already some applications that you will develop with your team, or are you first targeting developers who will create these applications to attract new users?
So we are building our own applications. I mean, the DMT is very strongly supported. The dematerialize.com is very strongly supported by Lukso. There's other applications and mobile applications that we are building that will showcase that we will reveal in due time. But it's about building the pieces. So it really depends on what kind of knowledge level you have. If you really know how to do smart contracts, you're welcome to join our GitHub discussions and talk with us on a really low-end technical level. There's a lot of projects that we work closely together with that build on Lukso and that are doing their own application that obviously, use universal profiles and use the new NFT standards that we have and so on. So it's really on what level you are, you can participate on all of those levels. But it's, if you're just an end user, then wait for the applications and you have a lot of things to click and buy and send and whatever. So there's something for everybody, but still things will need take time because the vision of what we are building, it's quite big. And we are not just an app. We're not just like building an app and then there's one use case and that's it. We're creating an ecosystem and we're building the basis for that. And that on the end will also be built by hundreds of other people and their own startups and applications. So in order to really like see this whole thing come together, like give it a year or 2 or 3 or 5, what do I know? It's a different size of what is possible.
Yeah, and here from the community, there is also a time horizon of 1 year. Like, where do you see Lukso in 1 year? Like, will we already have, in terms of user numbers, or what kind of metrics are you actually using to evaluate the success of the blockchain or your project, like Lukso in this case?
So user numbers, to predict user numbers or transaction numbers or whatever is really hard to do. So in the 1 year time, I mean, the Lukso mainnet will be live. There will be a lot of projects building on top of it, and there will be a lot of things that happen around these standards that we are developing. And I don't know. I mean, I guess what you could see as a metric is like how many projects are using, ideally, not just the network. That would be an easy one, because the moment you have a network that goes into the creative direction, it's fully Ethereum compatible. I mean, literally almost every project that's currently paying high transaction fees on Ethereum will feel better being on Lukso, especially when it runs like a Casper consensus. But it's about the standard adoption that really is, in my opinion, the most essential. I mean, the standard adoption of ERC20 created the blockchain space we have today. It's just the impact this standard had on everybody, including every other chain that like calls themselves TRC20 and CRC20 and whatever 20, they put a 20 on everything. Even though that was a random number, by the way. It was just really the issue number 20. There's no meaning in that. But the point is that standard really like sparked so many things. And this is the same thing what I see will happen with the universal profiles, so the ERC75 accounts, because it's so essential, powerful, and so completely open and unbiased in who it benefits or what it benefits. So that is a standard that might like have a life on many blockchains too. Hopefully this time they use a bit different names, be more creative when they clone things. but I guess the point is that the adoption of the standards and really evolving it together with the use cases, seeing, okay, what we need to change, what we need to improve, so it creates this kind of new compatibility layer. That's what really will make the spark and really make the adoption go big and go like useful for everybody. The network itself, this is just another network on the end that, I think is pink, so that's cool, and we build cooler apps, but it's just another network then. But the standards is really the key of all of this, I think.
Yes, and also here from the community, if we think about the further future, like the year 2029, for example, and we don't just project the present, so we don't just think, okay, what is now and what we improve and what kind of technologies evolve, we just improve those. In one of your talks, you talk about the wildcard. That can always happen in the future, and we can't really guess the wildcard, right? But we can talk about what kind of future is actually desirable. So, what kind of future you think projects like Lukso and maybe also other blockchain projects enable, and how do you envision such a future?
So, I mean, the thing is, when I set this wildcard at ECC, I think I do think, people can know the wild card, but it's like the future is here. It's just unequally distributed. Some people know, some people just don't. I mean, the thing is, I think my personal belief is that the 2020s, so the 20s that we are in right now, will bring the virtual reality and augmented reality shift. That means literally every digital thing we will project into our space, and we live in virtual worlds. And that's what this technology here already enables. And it's I'm not sure whoever experienced it. It's mind blowing. If you spend a few hundred hours in VR, you realize that is another dimension that is accessible now. And this is a fully designable dimension that feels as real if you want to, because you have that sense of presence. So that will be, in my opinion, a bigger shift than even the smartphone had. AR and VR together. And this world needs its own laws of nature. And these laws of nature will be governed by blockchain technology. Because that's the only way of how you create a law of nature in technology is you use blockchain or consensus-driven technology. Because there cannot be one single entity or party controlling the show. There will be George Orwell, worst kinds of scenario. So that's not the way it will go. So it will be a decentralized infrastructure and tech that powers that. And standards, again, it will be standards and a common infrastructure, and many common infrastructures that will power such a metaverse. I think this is the biggest shift. And by 2029, I mean, man, people will spend lots of time in VR. That's for sure. I mean, like what we do right now, that would happen in VR. Obviously, it could already do, but most people can't really watch it. And and there's also obviously, obviously what Elon Musk is doing is great. We are going to space. I mean, rapid development around Starship and all of these things is totally impressive. I mean, obviously, electric cars are the future. I mean, there's a lot of shifts coming, but I think the virtual reality and AR shift is bigger than anybody can predict, because it's just such a mind fuck, basically, literally. It's like literally places you in a different space, and that's just so powerful, because now you can, when the internet brought us communication-wise together, we are literally brings us into the same village physically. And if you if you can literally be in the same place, no matter where you are on the planet, that allows you to create whatever, it allows you to create, massive multiplayer stateful worlds, where the rules are run on blockchain. And that's crazy. So
if we look into your white paper, for example, there are different things that you believe future users are interested in, where I partly agree with. For example, you say that they will prefer items that are unique instead of just exclusive, and they are personalized instead of just customized. So this is a big difference, right? And they also hope that their belongings give them access to communities instead of just the ownership, and that this digital ownership captures value and enables people to actually participate in these cultural conversations across the globe even. And you coined it with this term, and maybe you can expand on this and elaborate on this, the Phygital. So what do you mean by this term, the Phygital? So where the physical and digital world actually merge with each other, and how can technology like Lukso, for example, help or enable this Phygital world?
Yeah. So I mean, with Phygital, basically we mean a physical item that has a digital component to it. It's a physical digital thing. And I think most things we will own in the future will be Phygital. I mean, your smartphone is Phygital. It's a physical device that has a digital side to it, right? It's a Phygital. Mm-hmm. But I think these things that we described in the white paper, they are valid for the physical world, physical collectibles, things that you buy and own and whatever. But they're also valid for this purely digital new world and these new digital kind of assets. We tended to focus more on the digital assets because it's easier to adopt, and it's something that is already a grassroots growing demand for it. Even though, again, like I said, we have to think about a lot of questions here, also philosophical. But it, on the end, will happen for the physical world as well. I mean, you can solve counterfeit, and you can make a different kind of community-driven things. And I think another big piece that I guess really right now is not so big yet, that will be actually even bigger in the next few months and years, is these cultural currencies. It's like tokenized communities or tokens that are not in the purpose of I'm buying a token to somehow, let it go up in value, but I'm earning a token that means something, that either means I participated, or that means I'm a part of something, or that I believe in something. And this is something that might be more valuable than money while not being sellable. Because if, for example, I'm a big fan of a certain, let's say, musician, and I somehow accumulate a lot of his tokens, coins, points, whatever, because I've been in a lot of concerts, and this is something I cannot buy or sell, then that reputation, meaning I have been on almost every of his concerts, whatever, is invaluable. It's something that you cannot buy for money, because you cannot replicate the past doing the same thing. So we will have these reputational and cultural currencies that will determine, like, our status or our beliefs and our influence and our understanding of each other as well. And I think that these will be massive, and whatever monetary value will come out of those or not is, to be discussed, and is. But I think these will have massive influence on decision making, on like who is a decision maker, who is an influencer, how our decisions are made. You can build whole voting systems around this stuff. So lots of things that will come, and we haven't even started, touching any of this. So it's super exciting. Again, all needs, blockchain-based accounts and profiles, for example. So really essential here.
Yes, so what we're really doing here is setting the base for the future, and which sounds quite exciting to have. And there are many other questions from the community, and we're a little over time. So I suggest that we translate this discussion to our Telegram group. So everybody who wants to ask more questions and get in contact with Fabian, please join us on our Telegram channel. And he will also spend like maybe 10-15 minutes to also answer a few more questions. I thank you very much for your insights, Fabian. This was super interesting to learn more about the future and how to actually participate in this, because after all, everything is open source, right? So you can go to GitHub, you can participate, you can get involved with your own skills. And there are also many more projects that are in the pipelines that will help actually artists, for example, and end users to participate in this new economy, because it's not just developers. Like with many other new blockchains that only target developers but don't care about the rest, because they think, okay, the developers will take care, but the developers are going to Ethereum because this is where the users are right now. But if we enable developers to actually build new kinds of application, like Lukso is doing in this case, they have a real reason to go there and build something new, and that is super exciting. So also thank you very much for the audience. We had really many questions. We will try to answer them in the chat as well, as I just stated. And also thanks to my team here that is also distributed across the globe. We're having in Portugal, in Thailand, here in Germany. Thank you very much, everyone. And we will have another show next week. This show will be about artificial intelligence and how this can benefit the healthcare industry. Again, with Sönke next time. And also, if you want to see more and learn more about Lukso and meet Fabian, please visit our conference in early July, where he will also give a keynote. So you have the chance to meet him there and also step into the discussion about our future and how to build it. And I say once more, thank you very much. Goodbye, and long live the blockchain.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you, Fabian.